Welcome to another fine edition of On the Spot. My name is Ronnie Wiley. This is Larry Myers, the voice of the Connersville Spartan Bowl. Larry, welcome. More than just the voice of the bowl. We'll get into Larry. You're just the voice, and we'll get into that more later. Larry, again, I met you at the bowl. You're very familiar with that. People who go to the bowl know your voice. They recognize the voice before they recognize the name. But you're not from Connersville. You're my first. Well, Holly Dunn was my first guest that wasn't from Connersville. But you don't have roots here in Connersville, but you have planted roots.
Actually, yes. Have no relatives here in Connersville, in the Fayette County area. Originally, I'm from Franklin County, grew up there. Mm-hmm. My work took me to Hamilton, Ohio, first few years of employment. And believe it or not, I worked with a gentleman from here in Hamilton at a bank in Hamilton. Mm-hmm. He later became an officer at Central State Bank here in Connersville.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And really a crazy story. Came to a sectional game in 1968 to see my cousin play, who was at Whitewater Township, and they were playing in the finals here. Walked in the bowl, sellout crowd.
Hadn't seen anything like that, had you?
Right. Our seats were right next to my friend that had moved to Connersville.
Yeah.
He said, "Hey, we've got an opening at Central State Bank. How would you like to come over and go to work for us?" I came over the next week, interviewed with Bob Price, who was president of the bank, and 2 weeks later, I was in Connersville.
Yeah, little did you. And what year was that again?
1968.
Yeah, so what? 22 years later, you would be where you're at now.
Right.
So you established your roots, Central State Bank, and how long did you work there at Central State Bank?
All my career here. Actually, I started with the bank in this very building.
Oh wow.
Worked
That's
here.
Right. That's right, yeah.
Yes, and the bank owned an insurance agency called Central Insurance. I later became the manager of Central Insurance, and when the bank was sold to Fifth Third, the agency was divested by Fifth Third, and Bill and Brad Wilson and I became partners in the Wilson Lawson Myers.
You're the Myers of that.
Right.
I coached your team in Little League Baseball back in '97, I believe it was. Yeah, Wilson Lawson Myers. Yes. So
yes.
You're the Myers of the Wilson.
I'm
Lawson.
the Myers. Yes.
Yes. All right. Yeah, I kind of didn't catch that connection there. But yeah, I was a coach back in 1997.
I remember that.
Yeah. We were. It was a fun team. One of my best teams. Buddy of mine, Bill Creech, was my assistant coach back then. So you work at the bank. Your wife was she working at the other bank at the time? Or were you guys married yet?
We were not married
Oh,
then.
sorry about that. Well, we'll get to that a little bit later. So anyway, so you work at the bank. You started actually here in Connersville by introduced at the bowl. 22 years later, there's an opening for someone to be the announcer at the bowl for the ball games. How did you get interested into that?
Well, Jerry Knorr was superintendent of schools. Mike Serqua was the athletic director.
Remember that?
I was into automobile racing announcing, and Jerry Knorr, the superintendent, was a racer. Jerry.
Oh, was he?
A lot of people didn't know that.
I liked him.
But he had a race car.
Wow.
He and I became friends. We spent a lot of time together. And when this particular position came up, he said, you might try out for that. Yeah. You might like it.
And and Sam Harvey shared the story.
Right.
I think Sam cried. We edited that out. He cried when we talked about that. But Sam was talking about how he was up for it. You were up against it. When you got the call that you had won, I guess. I mean,
yeah.
Again, it goes back to the bowl of when you got here.
Right.
I mean, how did that make you feel?
Oh, it was great. Great.
Yeah.
Little did I ever dream I would be part of the inner workings of the bowl in the school.
Yeah, 24 years later. Again, that's a lot of games. And we talked before the show that, and you said a lot of the games run together. Is there any particular certain games that stand out, certain players? Because you do the boys and the girls.
I do the boys and girls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there any particular game that may, a situation that may stand out that you thought, wow, that's unbelievable?
You and I were talking about that earlier. They all run together, truthfully.
Yeah.
As to an outstanding game, I'm not sure I can come up with one. Player-wise, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
The best lady basketball player that I've seen in my career, April McDivitt.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt.
Schilling.
Yeah.
She was the best.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Absolutely,
Hands down.
no doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. On the guys' side, there's been so many. You know, just thinking the other night watching IU play, Yogi Ferrell.
Yeah.
He's one of the best that I've seen in the bowl here. He was here 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. Yeah, I don't remember if we talked about it when you interviewed after the game last year or off camera. But yeah, I remember. Yeah, because we had so many great players. I remember there was an article in the paper about Oscar Robinson played. You know, we had so many. Greg Oldham when he was dominant in high school. We've had so many great players that had come through the bowl, not necessarily Spartans, and you got to witness them.
Right.
Yeah. So again, 22 years later, you're at the bowl. You're doing this game, but you had previous experience before announcing race cars. How did you get into that?
Been involved in racing off and on pretty much my whole life, and I had worked at Liberty out here at Union County or Whitewater Valley Speedway from the time it opened, which was in 1969.
Really, you've been out there that long?
Yeah, off and on. I've done everything but drive a race car out there. Never did that.
Yeah.
One day they were looking for an announcer, and they said, "Hey, you want to try that?" And that was in 1984.
Wow.
And I said, "Yeah, I'll try it." Yeah. I liked it,
yeah.
And they liked me, and so that's how I got into that.
Yeah, it was funny when we did the racing last year in Liberty, and it was such a fun. It was a fun, long night. I should say long, fun. It was a fun, but it was so long of a night. And I just watched racing. They just go around the track, and the lingo. You had to teach. Larry had to teach me the lingo. What was going on? And I know I butchered a few things wrong. But again, there's it's such a following. I didn't realize how much of a following it was. And I mean, you've created lots of lifelong friends over the years from that track.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
And this is Daytona week, which is the Super Bowl of NASCAR racing. It kicks it off.
Sure is.
I mean, very rarely do you kick off a sports season with a major. With an event like that. You have some photographs here.
Yeah, you had asked me to bring any pictures maybe that I had, and I've taken most of these myself. And some of these are a little dated. Some race fans that are watching will probably get a big kick out of them.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but that is a young Darrell Waltrip.
Wow, Darrell Waltrip.
1987.
Yeah.
He drove the Tide car, and I had the privilege of spending the week at Daytona in '87, and actually was in his pits race day.
Oh, wow, in '87.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't ask me how I finished because I don't remember.
You just know you had a good time, right?
I just know I had a good time. A lot of fun.
Yeah, Waltrip, but I remember, especially back in the day when it was allowed to be called the Winston Cup Series. It was Darrell Waltrip, and he was the big name, and of course Earnhardt Sr. Those were the two that I really, other than the King, which we got something coming up with him, which I love. Yeah. I love Petty. But those two back in those days, were the 80s, were kind of like the biggest two.
Right.
Yeah, and so you with Waltrip, I mean, did you get to? Obviously, you talked to him, but anything memorable about Waltrip that stands out to you?
No, he was really a nice guy. Actually, I knew some of the crew members. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him himself, but interesting thing, of course, he had the nickname Jaws. Yeah. He would bite anything that got near him. He's kind of overcome that now.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah, he was a tough guy. That picture, again, was in '87. That is a young Kyle Petty, Richard's son.
Yeah,
you see Kyle on TV now.
He's got short hair. That's unbelievable.
He's lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
That was his rookie year.
Wow.
When we were down there.
Yeah, he's a successful owner now, pretty much more than a driver, Kyle Petty.
That picture is Bill Elliott's car.
Yeah.
And anybody that's in NASCAR racing would know Bill Elliott's car.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons I took that is the Stant decal is on the bottom. There's a contingency fund, and if you have that manufacturer's sticker on your car and you win, you get money, extra money.
Oh, wow.
So Stant at that time was very big. They produced all the radiator caps for the NASCAR.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether they still do that or not, but they did then.
Yeah, well, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. going to skip a little bit. This is in Indianapolis. I had a friend that drove in Indianapolis in 1979. This is Sheldon Kinzer. Sheldon is from Bloomington. And there's a Kinzer clan in Bloomington. There's about 7 or 8 brothers and dads that all race. Sheldon actually reached the peak of the group, and that was his. He ran in the Indianapolis 500 about 5 times. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you have gone from Daytona. I mean, you've got the mecca of racing connections in there. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and you were talking about Richard Petty a while ago. I had the good fortune of doing the Richard Petty drive-along experience at Indianapolis. It's been 7 or 8 years ago, and they take your picture and all. Actually got to take 3 laps as a ride-along around the Speedway. Wow. And that was us on the racetrack, and I'm in one of those cars, the Petty car. You can't tell it from the picture.
Oh, yeah. But we're there. I see you.
Yeah. Yeah. My driver told me we were reaching speeds around 165 mile an hour.
Wow.
Which
did you feel? I mean, I drive like a maniac. I got to admit that. But I've never driven that fast. I mean, how does it feel when you're driving, especially as a passenger?
It's very fast.
Wow.
Very fast.
Wow.
I asked him if I could hold on. He said, grab anything you want to. I don't care.
I'm grabbing the brake.
And the first time we went into the first corner, I grabbed anything that was near her.
That was
it was a little scary.
Yeah. And you have a pit. This is your driver?
That was me and my driver. And
which could be Richard Petty, since you said he never took his helmet off.
He never took his helmet off. I never got to actually see his face, so I don't know who was driving me that day.
Yeah, well, he's got, if you look at his glasses closely in there, that kind of has, that may be the king. We never know.
Yeah.
You can say. And here is the picture.
There is the king. I've had the opportunity to meet him 2 or 3 times, and a great person, just a great guy.
Never have I ever heard anything negative about Richard Petty.
A good ambassador for the sport.
That's why he's the king.
Right. This picture here I took, I don't know what the date is on there. It
looks like 2003.
2003. That was at Indianapolis. We were strolling the garage area. This gentleman is Howdy Holmes. Howdy drove at Indianapolis in the 80s, was talking to him, and he always had a sponsor called Jiffy Mix. The people that make cornbread and the mix.
And the little bitty cakes.
Yeah. And I asked him, I said, how in the world did you get a company like that to sponsor you at Indianapolis? He said, my family owns the company. I'm the president.
Yeah, so
said,
definitely.
Now I know.
Yeah, and I tell you what, if driving the cars is as easy as making his cornbread, we need to go up there next week. Get down to Daytona right now and start racing. But it's a lot harder than that, and you have seen. What goes into, especially from Liberty. I mean, that stuff looks, you see them drive those little cars, and I thought, oh, that'd be a lot of fun. But there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of courage that goes along into it. Because, I mean, there's some pretty hefty crashes up there. What's your favorite racing to watch?
Actually, probably stock cars. I like all forms other than drag racing. I'm not a drag race fan. Don't watch it, but any from Formula One to Union County Speedway, I'll watch anything.
Yeah, and I tell you what impressed me so much about Union County Speedway was that, from before they started racing, when the track was pretty empty, that's a pretty decent sized track. You get those cars on there, it's like, whoa, I mean, you get all the, I mean, you really do have to, is there strategy involved?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it teams? I mean, because they talk about teams. You got the Stewart Haas Racing. You have Petty's team. You have Joe Gibbs Racing. I mean, I'm sure that individually you want to win, but you want your team to win as well. I mean, how does that concept work of teams and racing?
Mostly with the teams, what they do is they use information. Instead of one person collecting information, you got 4 people collecting it. They can put that all together and come up with setups for the cars, and it helps everybody. Instead of a one-shot deal, you got 4.
Yeah. Wow.
Come race day, I think it's every man for himself.
Yeah, that's what I would think. So too. Or a woman, since Danica is out there. Yeah,
every person.
So you, I mean, the racing. I mean, it seems like that is absolutely totally in your blood. What got you to follow racing in the first place? I mean, a kid from Brookville, basically.
Right.
You don't see too much racing going on around there. Did you drive like a maniac as a kid? Were you one of those
Oh, I
fast
did that
drivers
too.
like me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah.
Too many speeding tickets. But what got you involved in racing?
Actually, going way back, my grandfather was a race fan. He took my dad. My dad used to tell me stories about grandfather taking him. My dad took me as a kid, and I really got interested in it, and that's how it got started.
Wow. I mean, it seems like, a lot of a family thing. And of course, with
Yeah.
the racing, there's a lot of family people
A
involved.
lot of families involved.
Excuse me, you talk about, your involvement with racing, and then you get with your involvement in announcing. I mean, what's more of a thrill? I mean, because you get the best of both worlds. You get to watch it and announce it. Which one is your favorite thing?
I would have to say probably basketball.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I enjoy that. I think I enjoy that more. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one thing for me. I mean, as an athlete, I like to play sports, but I think, excuse me, I got this cough. I think for me, the thing that I like watching, I like to see the kids develop and grow, and that's why I think I like the more for me of the announcing, because racing. Do you see growth as much as you do when you see the kids grow from freshmen to, like we've seen kids grow up. You see kids grow up in front of your eyes. There's racing like that. I mean, because obviously there's the midgets that they go to, but is there any kind of
Stepping stone.
Yeah, stepping stone.
Yes, there is, and I've seen people go from the bottom or start. An example, Jeff Gordon. I did races when Jeff Gordon was racing.
Oh, really?
When he first started, I remember doing an interview with him in Florence, Kentucky. He was about 17, 18 years old, driving a midget. Did an interview with him, and when we got through, I'll never forget it. I said, Jeff, you did a great job. You're very polished. He said, I've been doing this for 7 years. And he was only 18 years old.
Wow. So he was doing this before he got his driver's license.
Wow. And he started racing in California. They had a law in California that you had to be a certain age, maybe 16, 18, to drive a race car. So that's why he moved to Indiana, because we didn't have one.
Right, yeah.
And that's why he settled in Pittsboro, Indiana, or outside of Indianapolis.
Yeah, and speaking of racing in Indiana, Tony Stewart is probably the most known from, especially around here. Rushville, he was born in Columbus, I think, and I don't know what he did in Rushville, but I know that he has those connections there. Have you ever met Stewart?
Yes. I did some races with him when he first started.
Yeah, what?
Didn't know a lot about him, heard a lot of people talking about him, and this Stewart kid, he's going to go big time. Mm-hmm. And I'd heard a lot of those stories before, but he actually did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Done very well for himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he's got his own racing team
Yeah.
now. Tragedy, what happened last August with that accident. But I heard that he had bought. Did he just recently buy into the dirt racing, a track, or buy a team? Because I know he's still heavily involved in doing what we did in Liberty.
Oh, yes. He owns a racetrack in Greenville, Ohio, just north of Greenville, Ohio, called Eldora Speedway.
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with that,
Yeah. Beautiful racetrack. He spent a lot of money there. He's done very well there, and I think he probably owns part interest in a track in Kentucky and maybe one out in Missouri, too.
Yeah, so you've seen a lot of guys come through racing and grow up. And I think that's what's so, your career, I mean, you cover, racing to basketball. I mean, that's kind of, two totally different sports. And you do it so well. You coming up on this is end of your 24th, coming up on your 25th. Do you see any end in sight?
I know it's coming, but no, not really.
For a long time.
No, health will dictate a lot of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, sometimes I'll because I try to keep track of the scoring. Not how well I do sometimes, because I get caught up in watching the game and the excitement of it all. But you do more than just announce. I mean, you keep some track of stuff as well, don't you? I mean, what do you keep track of when
statistics?
You do stats?
Yeah. And I have Bob Powers. Bob works with me down there on the scores table, and he keeps me straight.
Yeah.
Tries to make sure I know what files, what person, how many files, and all that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I sometimes lose track of that as well.
Yeah, it's hard to do when you're trying to announce. You know that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I always try. There's times where we get blocked from the camera can see it, but sometimes we get blocked because I don't like watching the screen. I like watching the action, and sometimes I can't see who's shot. And I always, what did Larry say? I try to keep track of that. Do you have anybody have you ever been out and about and said something and somebody recognized your voice from the bowl?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Make you feel good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, very much so. Yes.
Yeah. Try to get a little. Hey, can I get a little discount here? Huh? I always like kidding with Larry every time I see him. I'm like, Larry, you got to do the 3, but you can't do it. You can only do the 3 only at the bowl.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
so-
you have to come to the bowl to hear
Come to the
that.
bowl to hear that. Want to hear
Yeah,
this
I try
man?
to make it exciting, and the 3-point shot is an exciting thing, and
Yeah.
it excites the crowd.
How'd you come up with that? Was it just one of those things that you just said 3 and it went off?
I heard a professional game once.
Oh, did you?
And I thought, well, that sounds great. Yeah.
There you go.
Let's do that.
There you go. Because I love it whenever the other team hits 3, you go 3. It's 3.
You don't want to give them too much credit.
Yeah, 3. That's 3-point by a big deal on that. So again, let's go back to when you came here at the bowl, watching that ball game. Again, 22 years later, do you remember the first game that you did call? Do you remember that?
No. No, truthfully, I can't remember. Well, it would have been a Union County game.
Oh, I guess that would make
always
sense.
Union County, yeah.
Well, I didn't know if it was Union County or if the girls had something before that.
Yeah.
I guess that really answers my other question I was going to ask after that was, were you nervous? If you don't remember, you probably weren't.
Oh, yes, very nervous.
Have you ever been, do you still get nervous a little bit before a game, especially because, believe me or not, there are lots of times where Fran and I would see names and we're like, we have no idea how to pronounce that kid's name. And, luckily, if it's another team, they're not going to watch us. But you got right behind you is the visiting. You got to make sure you get those names right. Have you ever been nervous for a game? Like, I hope I pronounce this kid's name right?
Yes, very much so, because I don't like to have my name misspelled or mispronounced, and I don't think anybody else does.
No, not at all.
And if you mispronounce it, Mom or Dad will come down and tell you. And I don't like that.
His name is Smith. Get it right.
Speaking of names, I remember a few years ago, South Dearborn High School came in here, the ladies. There was a girl that played for them, and she was from Poland. Her last name had 17 letters in it.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'll never forget it. Semino Wazalewski was her last name.
Semina Wazalewski? The whole
Yes.
Semina wasn't her first name? It
No,
was Semina
that was her
Wazalewski?
last name.
Oh, my gosh.
And I asked the coach, I said, how do I say that? And he said, I call her Tex.
By the time you announce it, she scored. The other team has scored. So it'd be, yeah.
Yeah.
That's I don't remember if we ever did that game, but we've had a couple Richmond games where, oh my gosh, the kids, we can't pronounce their name, and so luckily, sometimes it stays here in Connersville. So
I usually take a few minutes with the visiting coach if there's any questions,
Yeah,
and some
we
of them
try
are good
to,
about it, and they'll come over and say, this person's never had their name pronounced right.
yeah. Can you do it?
Can you do it?
Yeah.
I said,
And you end up doing it.
Yeah, and I want to do it. I want to do it right.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So again, you got so many. We can go on and on about the bowl and about your racing, but what keeps you here in Connersville? You've been here now over 46 years. What keeps you and your wife here in Connersville? What made you fall in love with Connersville? Brookfield's just right down the street. It's not like you came from a different. But to a kid from Brookfield back in the day, Connersville was the big city.
Oh yes, very much so.
What keeps you?
They were the enemy.
That's right. That's right. That's right. They were. Tell
Yes.
me, do you still have a little bit of bias when Franklin County comes in?
No. But yes, Connersville has been very good to me, and great people, made a lot of great friends, and I just love the small communities. I've spent time in large cities. I have children living in Phoenix. I have one in Philadelphia, 2 in Cincinnati, and I just don't want to live there.
Yeah. You go visit.
I want to go to the store or walk down the street and wave at the police officer or the Federal Express driver because I know them.
Right.
I don't want to go someplace where I don't know anybody.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio until I was 16 years old, and I moved over here in 1987. So almost 28 years. It'll be August 2nd. '87 when we first moved over here, and a complete culture shock coming from a bigger city over to here. But I grew to love it, grew to appreciate it. Was over in Dayton, I don't know, 6 months ago, whatever, and I stopped at the mall. And Walmart, just to, the mall for old time's sake. And it was very odd to me to be in a Walmart and not be able to wave at somebody that I knew. That was very odd to me. I thought, wait a minute, I don't know anybody here. And I'm used to going to Walmart and seeing people and waving and telling them hi. And that's, I think that's what keeps people here in Connersville because, like you said, great friends. Sam Harvey mentioned that and Kirshner mentioned that. The theme goes on and on and on. Again, Connersville has meant so much to you and your family here. Do your kids like coming here to visit since they're in the bigger cities?
Oh, yes.
Are they like, Dad, how can you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, did they grow up here? I mean,
they all went to school here. Three of them were born here. My son still lives here, and he works out of town, but he still chooses to live here. He likes it here.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been here, like I said, 28 years, and the proximity of Dayton, Indianapolis, Cincinnati. I still have family over in Dayton, which is less than an hour away. Indianapolis is not that far. Cincinnati, if I really want a big time flavor, I can. But right here in Connersville, there is a nice community. It is nice people that you get to know, and they become lifelong friends. Really almost like brothers from another mother. Again, I was very shocked to find out that you were Wilson Lawson Myers, that you're the Myers of Wilson Lawson Myers when I coached the team. Of course, you guys got involved in that because you supported the athletics. Do you still have any support with young kids or anything like that?
Well, I'm actually not involved with the agency anymore.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, do you personally still have?
No. No, I don't. Not now.
Yeah,
No.
I tell you, when I was, there was one year your team was like the best. The guy who actually introduced me to Jesus was the coach of your team, and we couldn't stand his team, Wilson Lawson Myers, because they always beat us. And in the very last game, we beat them. So I loved it. And then I became like 2 years later the coach of Wilson Lawson Myers, which was absolutely awesome. And I think we went. Pretty good team. We had a fun team, but going back to your roots in Franklin County, what all did you do down in Franklin County? You were raised on a farm, or
Raised on a farm.
On a farm, and then what got you into banking? Just something you went to school for, or?
No, actually, I had a friend that was in banking and over in Hamilton, Ohio, and he called me one day and he said, I know this banker in Hamilton is looking for a good employee, and I thought of you, and why don't you go down and talk to him? And I did. Got the job. The rest is history.
Yeah, and then a couple years later, you come here to the bowl.
Yeah.
A couple years after that, you're announcing all the games.
Yeah.
Before that, you're announcing for racing, meeting the King, meeting Dale Rawtrip, meeting all these guys. I mean, Larry, you have such an exciting. I mean, your life is exciting. You've done so much.
I've been blessed, actually.
Absolutely.
Yes, I've had a good life. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can tell it. We got just a few more minutes before we get out of here. I guess with when my first experience with you obviously is hearing you at the bowl. And then meeting you at doing the racing. The funny thing about the racing was that I had never seen you outside the bowl, and there we were in shorts and hanging out and that. And then you had interviewed people. You could be interviewing people too. And,
I love doing that. Yeah.
You have that personality too. Who of all the people that you've interviewed, who can you remember? Who's the one that really stands out as somebody that thought, I really. That it was you nailed it, or they nailed it, or it was just a fun interview.
Oh boy, probably have to go back to Jeff Gordon.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell the story where you're talking about where I think you're in Indianapolis. Real quick, we'll round it up with this one. And you said people coming in. Jeff Gordon's in the other room. Take a picture with him.
A friend of mine and I were at the Speedway a few years ago. Oh, well, it's been a long time ago when the Brickyard first started in Indianapolis. And we were in the garage area, and Stan at that time had an office in the garage area. So we were in the office talking to some people, and one of the guys said, have you met Jeff Gordon? I said, no. You want to meet him? He's in the next room over here. I said, sure. We said, go on in. So my friend and I tore off into the room. And there's Jeff Gordon, a cardboard cutout.
And you took a picture with him.
And I took my picture with him anyway.
Absolutely.
I felt like an idiot. They were all laughing.
That's right. I would. Why not take it? Hey, Larry, it's been a pleasure. 30 minutes is up and gone. We can keep going on and on and on, but we'll definitely see you at the bowl again. If you want to hear his famous 3, come to the bowl. That wraps up this fine edition of On the Spot. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.